And so I really want to make a movie about music. And I got sent this book called Van Halen Rising by Greg Renoff that chronicles the story of the band Van Halen.
It is time to tell us an exclusive piece of information about your career, past, present, or future.
Well, that was about the past. So I guess I would probably choose to focus on the future. I guess, I would probably talk about, the next project that I'm really excited about. I mean, I get sent opportunities to either rewrite or direct movies that studios already want to make. And that's certainly been the path of my career in recent years. But I'm also always trying to think about movies that I just want to make and want to see as a fan. And I also always want to stretch and grow. I've worked in so many different genres, from horror to action to comedy. And you understand better than most the importance of music in movies. And so I really want to make a movie about music. And I got sent this book called Van Halen Rising by Greg Renoff that chronicles the story of the band Van Halen, basically before they got their record deal. So it doesn't tell the story of what happened when they got their record deal and the rise of their popularity and their eventual fall and all the shenanigans with David Lee Roth and Sammy Hagar. It's just the story of the Van Halen brothers in Southern California in the late 60s, 70s. They moved here. They were immigrants. They didn't speak English. Most people don't know this. And they were incredibly poor, but they were musical prodigies. And they started playing backyard parties. They basically invented the backyard kegger. And then across town, there was this rich kid with, huge rock star ambitions and no discernible musical talent named David Lee Roth. And he decided, that he wanted to be in their band. But he auditioned for their band and they said no. They're like, "You're fucking terrible. We don't want you in our band." So he started his own band. So through high school, you had these two bands that hated each other. You had the Van Halen band and you had the David Lee Roth band. And they kind of invented the battle of the bands and the backyard kegger. And it was this crazy time. Neither band could forget a record deal. They couldn't get a club gig. So only when they got over their differences, only when they buried the hatchet and realized that they needed each other, were they able to come together and create a band that got the attention of, wait for it, not a record label, but Gene Simmons. And this is totally true. Gene Simmons, the biggest rock star in the world at the time, actually wanted to sign this band, not because he wanted to get them a record deal or he believed in them, because he wanted to break them up. Because he wanted the Van Halen brothers to be in his solo act. And so you have this wonderful story of it's an immigrant story, but it's also a story about people from different socioeconomic backgrounds, people with different musical styles, learning to compromise, learning to overcome their differences. And only when they do that do they encounter, this third act antagonist that symbolizes everything they want, who is there to destroy them. And just by overcoming that final challenge, did they actually come together as a band and find themselves in a place where they were ready to record an album and become this huge sensation. And my movie ends on the first day they go into the recording studio.
Wow, that's awesome. How far along are you with this?
Script is done. It's going to go out as a spec probably in the next month or so. Nobody really knows anything about it. Nobody's read it yet. Just my reps and the producers, and obviously Greg, the author of the book. It's very difficult getting movies made. It's even harder when you have a massive music budget in the movie. So it's going to be a hard one to get off the ground. Maybe we won't, but I really love the story, and I really hope I get to make it, and so that people can see it on the big screen in the theater together.
And obviously, and I guess, this happens in pitch meetings a lot. Everyone wants a shorthand for what movies like. It's a bit of this with a little soups onto this. It's a bit of this with a bit of this. Do you have reference points, like tonally, where you see it sitting?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I would say it's sort of tonally in the same space as like a Dazed and Confused or an Almost Famous. I think it has a lot of the fun of like a Shakespeare in Love, sort of seeing these iconic personalities in their nascent sort of forms, not yet ready to emerge into what they eventually will become. So I'd say sort of Dazed and Confused with a little bit of Almost Famous.
It sounds wonderful. Best of luck with pitching that, Jeff, because I certainly, as a DJ who used to play some Van Halen when I was a younger man, I very much would like to see that movie brought to screen, if only so I could go, oh man, I used to play them when I DJ'd, which is the closest I'll ever get to being a rock star. I know you used to DJ as well when you were younger. I think it's the closest I ever came to. There's that brief moment where you put on, I know it was their latest stuff, but you put on Van Halen's Jump. And like when people, it's one of those tunes that people put their hands in the air. They're like, yes, it's the closest. There's a moment where you think, it's like I wrote it. That split second where you forget that you had nothing to do with it. You're like, I just made people put their hands in the air.
Well, that ties back into what we were talking about with music and that fist pump moment from Karate Kid. Actually, what I've written in the script, the final moment before we do that little epilogue where they go into the recording studio, but the climax of the movie is this final show they did after they rebuked Gene and they realized that they had one last chance to get a record deal or they're going to have to take normal jobs and kind of give up their rock star dreams. They did this show at the Pasadena Civic Center. And I tried to structure it almost like the end of Karate Kid or any great movie where everything comes together. And it's like the first time when they really harmonize, when Eddie does the finger tapping on the fretboard, and Dave finally does like this huge aerial jump and does the splits in the air. You just feel it like all come together in this moment. And I say we slow it down into sort of epic slow motion. And off of that, we cut to them pulling up to the record studio, and I actually play Jump, like the opening keyboard chords off that moment, because you do have that overwhelming feeling of like wanting to pump your fist in the air.
Yeah. Oh, Jeff, I'm excited for you. That sounds like a great project, and that is it. Your taxi.
Thank you so much for watching this interview. I'd love it if you would check out some of the other interviews on our channel. They're all fascinating and unique trips to the movies with some wonderful, wonderful guests. And if you would like to find out more, do hit us up on our social channels. We are at Trip to Movies Pod. That's at Trip to Movies Pod on all social media with lovely content on there. And you can get in touch with us if you so wish. Thanks again.